The Game of Echoes. In a parallel universe not too far from ours, there existed a game that every young man played once they turned 18. It was a rite of passage, a test of courage. The game was called Echoes. On the surface, their world looked a lot like ours. Skyscrapers touched the heavens, cars zipped through the streets, and people were glued to their devices. But there was one stark difference. Every person had an echo. An echo wasn't a reflection or a twin. It was a shadowy figure, always lurking just out of sight. You couldn't touch or communicate with your echo, but you always felt its presence, watching, waiting. The game of echoes was simple. On the eve of a boy's 18th birthday, he would be blindfolded and taken to an abandoned part of the city. The goal was to evade your echo until sunrise. If you succeeded, you were considered a man. If your echo caught you, well, no one really spoke about that. Jake was eager to prove himself. He had heard tales of the game, strategies to outwit the echo, and tales of those who never returned. But he was confident. After all, how hard could it be to evade a shadow? As the blindfold was removed, Jake found himself in a dilapidated building. The only light came from the moon, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He could feel his echo, its presence more pronounced than ever. Hours seemed to pass as Jake navigated the maze-like structure, always feeling his echo just a few steps behind. He tried every trick he knew, doubling back on his path, hiding in dark corners, even trying to communicate with it. But the echo was relentless. As dawn approached, Jake felt a surge of hope. He had almost made it, but as he stepped into an open courtyard, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder. He turned around to face his echo, its shadowy form now solid, its eyes piercing into his soul. "You can't escape," it whispered, its voice a chilling mirror of Jake's own. Suddenly, the world around Jake began to warp and twist. The buildings stretched upwards, the ground cracked open, and the sky turned a blood-red hue. Jake was no longer in the abandoned part of the city. He was in the echo's realm. Panicking, Jake ran, but every turn led him deeper into the twisted world. The echo was everywhere, taunting him, reminding him of his failures, his fears, his regrets. As the sun finally rose, Jake found himself back in the real world, surrounded by his friends and family. They cheered, congratulating him on becoming a man. But Jake knew the truth. He had not evaded his echo. He had become one with it. From that day on, Jake was different. He was quieter, more reserved. He often stared into space, lost in thought, and sometimes late at night, if you listened closely, you could hear him whispering to his echo, forever trapped in a game with no end. The silent hour. In a universe adjacent to ours, there was an unspoken rule: never be outside during the 25th hour. Days in this world had an extra hour. During the 25th hour, the world plunged into an eerie silence known as the silent hour. Streets were deserted, lights dimmed, and everyone stayed indoors. No one really knew why, but legends spoke of those who ventured out during this time and were never seen again. Mike, a rebellious 19-year-old, always questioned the norms. The tales of the silent hour seemed like old wives' tales to him. One night, fueled by a mix of curiosity and bravado, he decided to break the rule. As the clock hit the 25th hour, Mike stepped outside. The world was bathed in a surreal, bluish hue. The silence was palpable. Not even the wind dared to whisper. But nothing seemed threatening, and Mike laughed at the baseless fears. Walking down the streets, he noticed shadows moving just at the edge of his vision. Every time he tried to focus on them, they'd disappear. Thinking it was just his mind playing tricks, he continued on. Suddenly, he heard a soft, melodic humming. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Drawn to it, Mike followed the sound until he reached the town square. There in the center stood a massive ancient clock, its hands frozen at 24:30. Around the clock danced shadowy figures, their forms blurry and indistinct. They moved gracefully, their humming growing louder, filling the air with an otherworldly melody. Mike felt a compulsion to join them. Without realizing, he found himself moving closer to the clock. As he touched the cold, metallic surface, a jolt ran through him. The figures stopped dancing and turned towards him, their faces blank, void of any features. The world around him started to warp, the ground pulling him in like quicksand. Panicking, Mike tried to pull away, but the force was too strong. The figures closed in, their humming now a deafening roar. Just as everything went black, Mike heard a voice. "Another one joins the dance." The next morning, the town woke up to a new shadowy figure dancing around the clock. And as the days went by, the legend of the silent hour grew, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lay in the extra hour of their world. The fractured reflection. In a dimension parallel to ours, mirrors weren't just reflective surfaces. They were gateways to alternate realities, each slightly skewed from the last. Due to the dangers and unpredictability of these gateways, mirrors had been banned for decades. At 25, Alex was a physicist, always curious about the tales of the mirror worlds. His research led him to an old antique shop run by a peculiar old man with a reputation for having rare and forbidden items. Hesitantly, Alex inquired about a mirror. The old dealer, with a knowing glint in his eye, led Alex to the back room. There, shrouded in dim light, stood an ornate mirror, its frame adorned with intricate carvings of interlocking worlds. The price was steep, but for Alex, the allure was irresistible. He purchased it, thinking it would be a unique addition to his collection. One evening, after a long day of work, Alex found himself sitting in his study, the mirror opposite him. The room was silent, save for the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the city. As he absent-mindedly gazed into the mirror, he noticed something odd. His reflection wasn't mimicking him. Instead, it sat smugly, watching him with an intensity that was almost unsettling. Curiosity piqued, Alex leaned in closer. To his astonishment, his reflection began to speak. "Tired of your mundane life, are you?" it asked with a smirk. Taken aback, Alex responded, "Who are you?" The reflection chuckled. "I'm you, or at least a version of you, from a world where choices led me down a different path, a more successful path." As the conversation continued, the reflection painted a picture of a life filled with accolades, wealth, and love. It was everything Alex had ever dreamed of, every opportunity he had missed, every regret rectified. The temptation was overwhelming. Seeing Alex's interest, the reflection made an offer. "Touch the mirror and we can switch places. Experience a life where every decision you regretted turned out right." Hesitant but intrigued, Alex reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the cool surface of the mirror, the world around him blurred. When his vision cleared, he was no longer in his modest apartment, but a lavish penthouse. At first, the new world seemed perfect. He was a renowned scientist, had a loving family, and every luxury imaginable. But as days turned into weeks, the sheen began to wear off. His success was built on ethically questionable grounds, his wealth on exploitation, and his family lived in fear of his unpredictable temper. Desperate to return to his original life, Alex rushed to the mirror, hoping to switch back. But his reflection, now living Alex's simpler life, just smirked. "You made your choice," it whispered, "and so did I." Distraught, Alex sought out the old dealer, hoping for answers. The old man, after listening to Alex's tale, revealed the truth. For a switch to occur, both sides of the mirror had to willingly accept the change. Alex's alternate self had tricked him, wanting to escape a life of hollow success and unhappiness. Devastated by the revelation, Alex searched desperately for another mirror, hoping to find a gateway to a different world, a fresh start. But mirrors were rare, and his attempts were in vain. To this day, Alex remains trapped in a world that isn't his, a poignant reminder of the dangers of longing for a seemingly perfect life. The realm of the Watchers. In a dimension adjacent to ours, Earth was not a singular entity, but a vast expanse of fractured realities. Each shard represented a different outcome, a result of choices made and paths not taken. While most inhabitants of these realities lived in blissful ignorance of the others, a rare few, known as shifters, had the ability to traverse between them. Corbin, a veteran shifter, had seen more realities than most. His journeys had taken him to worlds of eternal night, realms where time flowed backward, and fragments where the laws of physics were mere suggestions. But nothing prepared him for the desolation he encountered upon entering a recently shattered reality. Entire cities lay in ruins, their inhabitants mere husks, devoid of life and essence. At the heart of this devastation were the enigmatic entities known as the Watchers. Neither living nor spectral, they existed in the liminal spaces between realities, feasting upon the essence of each fragment and leaving behind a void of nothingness. Their origins were a mystery, but their purpose was clear: to consume. As Corbin delved deeper into the mystery, he discovered that the Watchers were not just passive observers. They were predators, systematically hunting each reality, growing in strength with every conquest. Their ultimate goal was unclear, but their path of destruction was undeniable. Determined to halt their advance, Corbin sought out other shifters. Together, they formed a resistance, pooling their knowledge and resources. They trained in hidden fragments, honing their skills and developing strategies. Their plan was to create a diversion, drawing the Watchers to a fabricated reality, while the rest of the team worked to fortify and shield the remaining fragments. The confrontation was imminent. As the Watchers descended upon the decoy reality, a fierce battle ensued. The realm itself seemed to quake under the weight of their clash. The shifters, though skilled and resourceful, were no match for the overwhelming power of the Watchers. One by one they fell, their essences absorbed. Corbin, seeing the tide of battle turning, made a desperate decision. Using a forbidden technique known only to the eldest shifters, he tore open a rift, a temporary escape route to a distant, untouched fragment. But the act came at a great cost. The energy required left Corbin weakened, his ability to shift between realities severely diminished. He found himself in a reality eerily similar to his original one, but with subtle, unsettling differences. Here, the Watchers were mere myths, tales told to frighten children. But Corbin knew better. He had seen their power firsthand. Though defeated and stranded, Corbin's spirit remained unbroken. He began to gather allies, sharing his knowledge of the Watchers and preparing for their inevitable arrival. He trained a new generation of shifters, hoping to mount a defense against the looming threat. In a universe of infinite possibilities, one man stood as a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. The battle was far from over, and Corbin, though scarred and weary, was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Obsidian Sea. In a dimension starkly different from ours, Earth was dominated by a vast black ocean known as the Obsidian Sea. No sunlight penetrated its inky depths, and its shores were barren wastelands. The few cities that existed were floating metropolises, tethered to the ocean floor by colossal chains. The inhabitants of this world had adapted to life on the water. Their skin was pale from the lack of sunlight, and their eyes had evolved to see in near total darkness. But what made this dimension truly unique was the nature of the Obsidian Sea itself. It wasn't just water, it was a sentient entity, ancient and inscrutable. For generations, the people had lived in harmony with the sea, respecting its power and providing it with offerings to ensure safe passage across its vast expanse. But as their civilizations grew and technology advanced, they began to exploit the sea, drilling into its depths for resources. Elias, a marine biologist in one of the floating cities, began to notice disturbing changes in the sea. The once calm waters became turbulent, and strange, never-before-seen creatures started emerging from the depths, attacking ships and settlements. Determined to understand what was happening, Elias embarked on a perilous journey to the deepest parts of the Obsidian Sea. Using a specially designed submersible, he descended into the abyss. What he discovered was beyond comprehension. The sea's consciousness was awakening. The drilling and exploitation had not only harmed it physically, but had roused it from eons of slumber, and it was angry. Elias tried to warn his people, but his claims were dismissed as fantastical. But soon, the reality became impossible to ignore. The obsidian sea began to reclaim the floating cities, pulling them into its depths with its newly manifested tentacle-like appendages. The once majestic metropolises became underwater tombs. Desperate to save his world, Elias sought out ancient texts and legends. He discovered a forgotten ritual to appease the sea. With a group of loyal followers, he performed the ceremony, offering a symbol of their renewed respect and promise to live in harmony with the sea. The obsidian sea, though still restless, ceased its attacks. The remaining cities, now aware of the true nature of their world, began to rebuild with a newfound reverence for the sea. Elias's tale became legend, a chilling reminder of the consequences of taking one's environment for granted. In a dimension where the line between the natural and the supernatural was blurred, the balance between humanity and the forces beyond their understanding was delicate and ever-shifting. We hope you have enjoyed tonight's stories. Please comment on any story you would like to see expanded on. If you can subscribe, it would mean a lot to us. That is, if you are brave enough to enter the multiverse.